Hey everyone, come on in. Namaste. It's good to see you. Thank you for coming back. I guess by now, if you were here last week, you realize this is a college course. This is a university level book study experience. We didn't know this in the beginning, but uh, Jenny Beal really set the benchmark last week. I think we should start calling Jenny Professor Beal. I'm only kidding, but Jenny, you did an awesome job last week. And for those that are here this week, if you weren't here last week and you didn't watch the replay, I think the replay of the first of last week's book study is really invaluable because Jenny really gives the true backstory of Atmananda, Krishna Menon, and also the context of his these discourses and his two books that are 18-page books. Really, they're called poems or books, and they're really his direct teaching that was without an audience. They were just him putting his thoughts and on subject matter and in a book form kind of a way. He has the first one we're going to look at. It's the Atma Darshan, and then the other one is the Atma Nirvriti. And so if you didn't see last week's, if you weren't here last week, watch the replay of Jenny explaining the backstory. I think it'll be very helpful for you. And this week, we're graced with a beautiful person that I work with every week. And she's been part of the Teachers of God Foundation. She's the community manager for the community Evolve that we started a few years ago. And I want to give a warm welcome to Susan Telford. She's in Scotland. Hi, Susan.
Hi, Bill. Thank you for that lovely introduction. Hello, everybody. It's lovely to be back in the book group.
Yes, thank you. And Susan and I have grown to, I mean, we have weekly meetings, and half of our weekly meetings is really talking about these things. Half of our weekly meeting is usually talking about the ideas that are presented by the different presenters or the teachers that we're considering for the Evolve community presenters, or the conferences and what's current with Pure Presence conferences, who's coming in there that we might shift over into the Evolve community. And it's just been a joy to become friends with Susan and to work with her. And also her love for truth is evident in her co-hosting. You'll find today. And we're looking at the first 10 discourses, pages 1 through 5. And I'll leave it there and ask Susan, where would you like to start, Susan?
Well, as they say, let's start at the very beginning. Number one. I've just loved this exploration of deep sleep. The first one is, how is deep sleep a key to the ultimate? And I'm sure everybody knows, but just the background of this, that there are said to be three states: waking, dreaming, and deep sleep. And what's common about with waking and dreaming is that there is the presence of objects. Objects that, the body, mind, and world in the waking state, and in the dream state, in the night dreams, the presence of dream objects, the dream figures, the scenario, the location of wherever the dream is taking place. And so there's mental activity in the waking state and in the dream state. And in looking at this and researching it, it suddenly occurred to me, it's maybe really obvious, but it occurred to me that in deep sleep, we get to taste our true nature every single night. That kind of blew my mind.
Yes, yes, mine too. It got
Yeah,
me very interested. It started making me lean in and want to know more.
yeah, exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
Um, So the happiness and peace of our true nature is available to us. And I have to thank Jenny for pointing me to other places in the material, in the other books, and in the Atma Darshan. In number 5, Jenny gave everybody this last week: deep sleep, nirvikalpa samadhi, and natural state is section 5. And it says, it is in consciousness that objects rise. Therefore, when they disappear, what remains over is this consciousness and not nothingness. And I really pondered that for a while. And because when we're in deep sleep, we can think that we just go into some kind of void, that there's nothing. We're not aware of anything. We don't remember the deep sleep phase. But this clearly says that what remains in the absence of all the objects, what remains is consciousness, not nothingness. And it goes on to say, if this truth takes deep root in thought, deep sleep, giving up its character of veiling the reality, becomes transformed into nirvikalpa samadhi. And when objects are also realized as nothing other than consciousness, one comes back to one's true nature, which is changeless and above all states, including samadhi. And the notes on the discourse say to sleep knowingly. So what does that mean, to sleep knowingly? And that's dealt with in volume 2, number 599 of volume 2. And I've actually been doing this. So it says, it's very practical. It says, know that you're going to sleep. Let that thought be as vague as possible. Then empty your mind of all intruding thoughts, taking care not to strain the mind in the least. Having understood from the Guru that your real nature alone shines in its own glory in deep sleep, if you relax into deep sleep as already suggested, the deep sleep shall no longer be a state, but your real nature, even beyond nirvikalpa samadhi. It just, it certainly changes going to bed.
Yes. Well, yes. The description is so specific, and it's so clear, and we can all test it. We can all test it for ourselves, and it's not something that has to happen later, or you can play with it.
Tonight.
And yeah, you can play with it tonight.
Yeah.
You can, and also it started as you said. These ideas cause you to ponder your own direct experience, and it caused me to look at what deep sleep does for the body mind. It makes you, I mean, that's why it's so important to have that visitation, because if you don't, you're screwed. Sleep deprivation hurts, and it causes you fatigue. You must go to that place to rejuvenate. I didn't realize that the essence of sleeping was replugging into our essential self.
Yeah. Returning there. And it's not dependent on anything that you know. It's happening to everybody in deep sleep every single night, whether they're on any kind of spiritual path or know anything about any of this stuff. That's
Mhm.
where we are returning over and over.
Yeah.
And in volume 3, in the statements at the back of volume 3, again, number 599, it says, sleep involuntarily. So that's what we would normally do. And you will be taken to the ignorant man's deep sleep. Sleep voluntarily, and you'll be taken to Nirvikalpa Samadhi. Sleep knowingly, and you will be taken right to your real nature, your natural state beyond all samadhi. And it just occurred to me, I thought, how often do we hear people say that they have real inspiration first thing in the morning? We often hear about people, you're in the shower, or just a light bulb moment, a kind of download happens. And I thought, is it possible that because we are going back to our true nature in deep sleep, that as we re-emerge into the waking state, some wisdom from true nature is coming through with us? I don't know if that's true or not, but it seems to make logical sense to me that we're connecting with something that then is able to come through into the waking state.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, that's my experience. It's sort of a leaking in. And actually, we're bringing our essential nature with us before it's diluted, ignoring our essential self, before it's diluted with all the activities of the body mind. We're bringing our essential nature with us first and foremost. That's why, I don't know, whenever I have a nap, I probably have one a week, or once every 2 weeks, I'll have like a nap. You get up from the nap, and once you push away or dismiss there's a momentary not wanting to get up, and then all of a sudden when you're up, you've got this fresh new ability, a fresh new energy, and it happens there too. So I think I think we do bring it with us, or actually, that's not even saying it correctly. It's always us.
Yes.
It gets covered by the false self that becomes, starts putting objects and experiences and behavior and characters in play. But before they all come online, we're drawing from the light.
Yeah. Yeah, the consciousness is the background, but it gets obscured by the focus on the objects. Because it's quite interesting to really pay attention to that waking moment, where almost before that body mind organism thing constellates, there's a little gap before it all kind of comes back in again. I've
Yeah.
played with that a little bit when I occasionally noticed it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's see, was there anything else that you picked up in the other? And I just want to say to everyone, I thought we really just needed the one book, but if you really want to follow, you really need this book study. You really should have all three books. If you want to, if you really want to do a little study on the material, we'll be using all three books. I can see that.
Yeah. Yeah. The only other thing that I really wanted to highlight from discourse number 1 was the last sentence. Thus, deep sleep can be utilized directly for establishing oneself in the real center. So just as we would use, other spiritual practices, or, listen to teachers or whatever, deep sleep can be used when we learn to sleep knowingly, or we have the intention to sleep knowingly. I'm just really excited to see what unfolds with all of that.
Yeah. 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 Me too. It's, I, Susan, we were in our conversation on yesterday, and we were talking about the awareness podcast when I was talking with Bob Gottfried, and he's that therapist in Canada that suggests that we, before we go to sleep at night or when we wake up in the morning, give ourselves a nice, healthy smile. So bring your attention to your essential nature, is what he's saying. Bring what you just experienced with you. It's kind of like that same kind of play. And now we're looking at what Atmananda has to share on this matter. And it's a time to sort of do some investigation, have to try some different methods for making contact, or intentionally being moving your readiness or your attention to the experience that is about to take place.
Yeah.
Yes. There's a few comments on the chat that I want to pick up on, and of course, this is funny. Paul suggests that I think it was Paul, or maybe it was Rick, that suggests that giving Jenny the title of professor is a little bit of a downgrade. It wasn't meant for that. It was meant for more of an upgrade. But you're totally right. But I have a lot of respect for professors. They really mostly earn those credentials. And there was something that Rick is always active in these book studies. Richard West, if you don't know Rick, he says we're never really in deep sleep, even though it appears to be so. Rather, in a sense, this stateless realm points to our essence. Well, I don't. Is that true though, Rick? Because I mean, if you do go into deep sleep, or you'd be miserable when you woke up the next morning. When you don't sleep well, that you don't feel well when you wake up the next morning. And I think it's a lack of going into the deep sleep experience, maybe. So anyway, if you want to come on and say something about that, you're welcome to raise your hand and respond. Anything else that we're missing in the chat, Rana or Susan?
I don't think so. Yeah, Clarissa's saying, I'm sorry if I missed this, but certainly deep sleep does not mean dreaming. Yes, that's right.
Yes, exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And Karen says Deepak Chopra recommends that you recapitulate your day before going to sleep. Yes, so does Krishnamurti. Krishnamurti used to say, kind of take stock in what happened in the day before you go to sleep at night. And really just do it quietly, just do it being present and aware of it without judgment. And that's where I think that's where you clean house and you evolve. I don't think you have to. This is my opinion. I think you start a practice and then it takes over as something that has been invited, and then it just becomes something a new default for you. That's what I think. So you want to carry on?
Yeah. So number 2, how can remembrance be forgetting? It says every thought merges into consciousness and remains not as thought, but as consciousness pure. So you're searching in that consciousness for the resurrection of any thought merged therein is in vain. It can only result in your first forgetting your real nature of pure consciousness and in the subsequent creation of an entirely new thought, as though experienced sometime earlier. And I thought that, to me, that just pointed to everything being new in the moment. That we have a tendency to look back, but that everything is just happening in the moment. It reminded me of what Francis Lucille said about things being fresh out of consciousness's oven.
Right.
I like that. I like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. And that's why efforting gets in the way of what you're looking for. And this is why the teachers that really know what they're pointing to, they're very reluctant to say, practice this or do this. They're very, if you listen and you watch, they're very reluctant to invite you to practice, even though they know that in the beginning one needs practice, but that is also let go when the understanding is stabilized. Then even the practices, they no longer, they're not no longer necessary. This is why he's saying that this is in vain, to try to get, to achieve, to attain something. Even though you have to start there, you have to throw that away.
Yes. Yeah, it made me think as well about, when you hear people say that, they had a glimpse, they had an experience, and they're always trying to recreate that or resurrect it or get back to it. I felt it was perhaps pointing to that as well.
Yeah.
Um,
What is there anything else on that one that you want to look at?
I don't think so.
Okay. And for anyone that has comments on any of these that you found that we've missed, and you want to chime in, just use the raised hand feature, and we'll invite you to come on with your comment or your question. I like number 3. Where, when, and how do I see me?
Yeah. I'd actually kind of contemplated this one before turning the page. There's an explanation on the next page, but what I thought, the first thing was the capitalization of me. So it's talking about the self, the consciousness. And I see me where the where is not. Where implies space, location.
Right. Okay.
So the capital M, me, is not located. And I can see me when the when is not implies time. So it's not in space, it's not in time, it's not bound by space and time. And then I see capital M me when I see little m me not. So, obviously that reminded me of people often use the little s self and the capital S self. So there's talking about I'm loath to say two different things, but they're drawing a distinction between the big M and the little m. And then, as I said, on the next page, there's an explanation. It says, I shall see me only when I transcend the gross body idea, which is governed by space as well as time. So when I transcend this idea that I'm a body, and I transcend that as my identity, I shall see me only when I transcend the subtle body or the mind, which is governed by time alone. So it's body and mind. And I shall see me only on leaving both the gross and the subtle bodies, when I stop the objective search, when I stop the search outside for objects and turn inward to know oneself as the subject.
Yeah. Yeah, this is and these sound and feel like big steps, like really big steps to not be this, and they kind of are. That's why Jenny mentioned last week that this takes time for one to be established in this teaching, even though it looks like, I mean, all the great teachers that we've heard of or know about, like Eckhart or Byron Katie, or different great teachers. They had this sudden awakening. Well, they don't talk about the 5 years that they gradually understood what they saw, they got a shot of. They just really, you hear about the one event, and seeing, I shall see me only, it might be from one statement that's made right here. It might be from one of the other book studies, something that Rupert said in Being Myself, or Being Aware, one of Francis's or Jean Klein's books. It only takes one idea to come in and go, oh my God, I get it. And then it opens you up to receive the rest of the story, as Paul Harvey would say.
Yeah. Amy has asked a question on the board. She says, I think it's important to distinguish between the use of the terms subject and object. It means two very different things in Western science and Eastern spiritual terminology. Would someone take this on?
Well, it's super important to distinguish between subject and object. And even when I or Susan or someone else gives their version of it, there's still more on the subject. Subject is that which is not objectified. Subject is the is the is the unchanging essence of being without opposite. And an object, of course, is anything that is being added to the one. It takes you directly into duality. That would be one way I would look at it. And then there's another way. The subject, if you follow the teaching of Krishnamurti, Krishnamurti would say when there is no subject, or when the analyzer and the analyzed are one, you're there. That's it. And so when there's no subject and object, then you're in the one, the unified oneself. And so there's almost like several stages to look at this. One of them is in discussing these matters of awakening and duality and non-duality and subject object. And then when the subject object become one, that would in my mind would be your awakeness. Susan?
I just read, first of all, what Jenny has said in the chat. Even in contemporary science, the subject is seen as being inseparable from the observation of the phenomena. That was not so in earlier times.
Okay. Even
I
in
think
contemporary science, subject is seen as being inseparable from the observation of the phenomenon. That's cool that science has taken that on or has taken that position. That's a big beginning.
In so-called normal life, pre-spiritual, um, we think ourselves to be the subject of our experience. I see, I taste, I hear. I'm the subject, so we think, and all those things out there are the objects. But what we come to realize is that this I that is doing this is also an object. It's
Yes.
and the subject is awareness, it's
It,
consciousness.
thank you. That's the other one. That's the one when I knew there was another version of the subject object, and that's it. That's the subject. That's the false subject object. It's the time space based subject object, and that which has no voice, no words to speak, is aware of that one as an object. And actually, it's not even an object of that one. It's one with that one.
Yeah.
And that's where Krishnamurti, when he says, when the analyzed and the analyzer are one, then you understand the oneself.
Yeah.
So even the subject and the object is just a temporary communication, a temporary means of trying to explain what it can be explained, but it's trying to explain what has no voice.
Yeah. And it says at the end of explanation 3, when I stop my objective search and turn inward to find myself as one with that which I was searching for. In other words, only when the subject-object relationship vanishes.
There it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the ultimate goal, but there's really no goal. Because the seeker has to go away. Jenny said something about that. Let's go back and look at what Jenny said. She said, no, it was before that. She said, where did it go? There is a point at which you feel, it was at 12:20. There's a point at which you feel you don't really, we were talking about sleep. She was talking about sleep. That's the end point of sleep, knowingly. There's a point in which you feel you don't really sleep. Actually, from a brain activity point of view, you are going into deep sleep. It's more that the states of mind are felt to be just that. You feel yourself as just continuous consciousness. That sounds true. Yep. Thank you, Jenny.
I've only had that experience once, and it was the day that I did that interview with Tom Dass on the podcast, when I had that real seeing something I'd never seen before. And that night, I was asleep, but I was awake at the same time. And I actually called Tom and asked him, is this a thing? But it never happened again. And so I was very conscious of what I said before of, I want to recreate that. That was cool. I want that to happen again. That one time.
Yeah. Yeah, it comes in different ways. And sometimes you'll hear people have an experience like that. Like you said a few minutes ago, Susan, they'll be searching to recreate that one experience. That is a total rabbit hole that you don't want to go down. Yeah.
Paul's saying, I think we should move to number 4. Time is running. Thank you, Paul. If you've
Okay. Thank you, Paul.
been in book studies with me before, you'll know timekeeping is not my strong suit. So, number 4, what is the nature and object of perception? I don't know how to say this first word, so I'm not even going to attempt it. I'm not going to say.
Jananan. How about
Yeah,
Jananan?
yeah, whatever. One of
Yeah.
those perceives.
Or you could just say Nanan,
Yeah, yeah.
maybe.
I find it quite hard to say that.
Yeah.
Perceives the absolute diversified as objects. Ignorant men identifying themselves with the gross body perceive gross objects. Others standing as mind perceive only subtle objects. Those standing as consciousness perceive only consciousness. And that's really in tune with what A Course in Miracles says, isn't it? That whatever filter, whatever belief we have is what we see. So if I believe myself to be a body, then I see a separate world of separate bodies.
Yes.
If I think that I am that mind is the only thing, then what I see is mind. But if I stand as consciousness, then I see everything. Everything is consciousness. Everything is God. Everything is one.
Yes. The understanding for me, it's a gradual it's a gradual evolving of consciousness back to itself as itself, because even in this bodysuit bill, I see the subtle relaxation of feeling separate from objects. It starts with bugs. For me, it started with bugs, but it has become. It seems like it gets deeper and deeper. The deeper we go in our understanding, the more we become one with all experience.
Yeah. Yeah. The in the Atma Darshan in section 4, it speaks to this as well. It starts off by saying, he whose mind is captivated by the beauty of a figure sculptured in a piece of rock forgets even the fact of the rock being its background. When he rises above this captivation and looks at the figure, he sees the background rock which supports the figure. When the rock thus receives attention, rock is seen also in the figure, and later on the figure is seen as nothing other than rock. Enlightenment of truth also comes in this manner. Consciousness becomes dimmed, chiefly through one's captivation and abiding interest in external objects, as we said before. And also, that relates back to the deep sleep, because that's gone then, the captivation with the external objects. When one outgrows this interest and looks at the objects, it will be found that they rise and abide in consciousness alone. When consciousness thus begins to receive due attention, it becomes revealed in the objects as well, and they themselves will in due course become transformed into consciousness. It is the realization of oneself and the entire world as one consciousness that is known as the realization of truth.
That is beautiful.
So, yeah, this if people have not got this Atma Darshan, the link has been posted a couple of times. Ronna, if you could maybe post the link to it again, because it's such a good kind of background resource.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Jenny mentioned last week that it's really meant for contemplation, meditation, and very useful for that. Just as as you were reading that, Susan, I could feel the content coming in.
Yeah.
It just felt so rich and so true. So yeah, for sure. I see Jenny typing. What are you
I
typing,
know.
Jenny?
I know. I was waiting too to see what she was going to
What are
say.
you writing there? Funny. Okay, so we'll wait. We'll catch up with Jenny.
Let's go on to
See,
5.
yeah, sounds
Yeah.
good.
So, yeah, what's the content of the interval between mentations? I like this one because it was so it was really practical and kind of clear. It said, let's examine our own casual statements regarding our daily experiences. We say, he comes, he sits, he goes, and so on. In the statements, coming, sitting, and going are somehow extraneous to him. As such, they do not at all go into the make of him. So he is the constant, or I is the constant. He
Yes.
alone stands unqualified through all time, continuing without a break. And that's what Jenny just alluded to about the knowing of oneself as continuous consciousness throughout the waking state, the dream state, or the deep sleep state. So it is this pure he or I or consciousness which shines through and in between all thoughts, feelings, perceptions, and states. And that's why often in meditation we're asked to place our attention in the gap between the thoughts, to have an experience of the background of consciousness that's always there. During this interval between mentation, so between mental activity, one has no thought of the state in which one happens to be. So here one is peace itself, and that is the I in its pure state. And then he gives the example of a painting painted on white paper. Even though there's colour on the page, there will be bits where the white is showing through, and then you see that the picture is nothing but the paper. So if you succeed in discovering yourself between two mentations, so in the gap between thoughts, in the gap between sensation, you easily come to the conclusion that you are in the mentations as well. Because, that's a really easy way to know yourself as consciousness. That which is there prior to the thought, during the thought, and after the thought has gone is constant, unchanged by the thoughts.
Yeah.
And I think in that as well is the realization that consciousness transcends all three of the states. That it's the background of all of them. It's present in all of them.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah, that's beautifully stated. It's and said and then explained. Susan, I think that really helps people that, when Rupert uses the screen, metaphor, and the movie that's on the screen the screen is unchanged by the movie that's on the screen. And that's this bodysuit too. The awareness, it's aware of the experience of this body mind of the Bill movie or Susan movie or Jenny movie. The awareness that's aware of that is unchanged by whatever happens by the body mind experience. And it's the same thing. And even as we pause, and like you said, Susan, for a meditation, a lot of teachers would say, to just have a breath awareness. Be aware of the breath, take a big breath and be aware of the breath. It's just really moving your attention to a single object, but it's really the awareness of the experience is what's being looked for, is to be alert to, or to take notice of.
Yeah. Yeah. And in mindfulness of breath meditation, what's really useful too is to notice the gap between the exhale and the inhale, between the inhale and the exhale, because that's the same pointing as the gap between the thoughts. It's pointing to that background of awareness that's always there.
Yeah.
That dissolving into that.
Yeah.
Amy's saying Rupert uses the white paper example often as well. Yeah, I think Ajay Shanti uses that as well. That when we look at the words on the page and we don't even notice until it's pointed to us the paper, the white paper that it's printed on.
Yeah.
As we overlook consciousness. Yeah.
Yeah. So going back to what Jenny was typing, she was just saying that Jnana is just a truth seeker. Jnana is the path through knowledge,
Yeah.
bhakti the path through devotion, etc. So Jnana is the truth seeker. And then Paul said Jnani is a Sanskrit word that means knowing, wise, sage, or one possessing wisdom. It is typically used to describe someone who possesses higher self-knowledge or the knowledge of liberation that is gained from yogic meditation and or study of the scriptures. Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Paul and Jenny, for that. Appreciate it. And Clarissa says the gap is the spot of white paper, right? It's not the spot of white paper, it's the background of white paper. The letters would be the spots, or the words, or the sound, the labels, the thoughts would be the thing that interrupts what's constant.
She said, I meant the little spot of white seen between paint.
Okay, yes.
And Tim has posted a link, but don't know what that is. Well, we move on because Paul's being our timekeeper. He's saying there's 13 minutes to 1 hour. Is this 1 hour and 15?
No, it's these are 75-minute
75.
book studies, so we have a little bit of time.
Yeah.
They're not 1 hour anymore. We changed that last year.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's
May
some
I
more time.
interrupt for just a moment, Bill? I wanted to get Lynn's question in because it is a basic question. Is there a difference between absolute and consciousness? Those terms.
Well, there could be. There's really not a difference. Consciousness and absolute are synonymous, but depending on the context that it's being stated or offered or discussed. But in this world, consciousness and absolute are the same. It's like God. God is actually a dilution of that, because it's using a kind of something that has a name. The absolute and consciousness are nameless ideas of the nothingness of everything. So yeah, I would say yes to that. What would you say, Susan?
Well, I think it depends who you speak to be honest.
True.
I was asking in terms of number 4, where it says Agyanan perceives the absolute, diversified as objects. And then
Yeah.
at the bottom, it says Gyanan standing as consciousness, perceive only consciousness. So that indicates some kind of difference to me.
Yeah, that first sentence reminded me of the Tao Te Ching, actually, when it says perceives the absolute diversified as objects. You know, the Tao Te Ching begins, the Tao that can be told is not the eternal Tao, and then goes on to say that the naming is the origin of all particular things. And you know, I'm very influenced by Regina Donacre's teachings on the 4 principles of God, where she draws a distinction between the absolute as being the unmanifest, infinite possibility, infinite potential, and consciousness as being the first creation of the manifest, of the absolute. So there's a slight distinction there. Jenny has said very simply, they're both names for reality. Is that exactly what you said, Jenny?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, they both mean
reality.
Yeah.
Jenny said.
But Susan, I track with what you're, and also who I'm not sure who was speaking a minute ago, but there is
Who answered the question?
Yeah, there is a distinction here where Jnana perceives the absolute. The perceiving of the absolute is diminishing the absolute. So it is causing a distinction between those two as if they're different.
Well, I think the clue to that comes in the second part of that sentence, though, diversified as objects. Perceiving the absolute diversified as objects, whereas in the final sentence, so is there a sense there of objects being separate things?
Yeah.
But in the final sentence, standing as consciousness perceives everything as consciousness, not as objects, as consciousness.
Yeah. And I think if you just use the 2 words, consciousness and absolute, and you didn't add any context at all, you would be talking about the same thing.
Yeah. And that's one of the things where we land on not knowing, I think.
Yeah. That's a good place to land.
Yes.
Who knows?
Otherwise we can get into
you get into a loop. Oh
Yeah.
no, it's this. Oh yes, no, it's that. It's this. Yeah.
Okay.
So let's move to number 5.
Let me just read what Jenny's written. Consciousness can be seen as an attribute of reality or absolute. So then you can stand as consciousness as it's the reality of our being. An attribute of reality.
Oh, okay. Yeah. That makes sense too.
Yeah. And you know, again, I just love what Francis Lucille says. Consciousness is the reality that is hearing these words. That's it in its absolute simplest, isn't it?
Yeah.
No intellectual definitions, or it's this or it's that, or one person says this. It's simply that the reality that is hearing these words. And so we all know that we are consciousness.
Yeah.
Okay.
What is the content of the interval between? Oh, we've
done that one. We're on 6 now.
One. What is the meaning of I? Oh, this is a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I really like this. The same words used in similar contexts cannot carry different meanings with different persons. When I say I, meaning my body, another understands it in the same sense, meaning my body. But when the other person uses the same word I, he means his body, which is entirely different to my body. So we're using the same words or the same, but we mean something completely different. Thus, in the case of everything, the bodies meant are different, but the word I is the same I. So I just love this simple logic. So therefore, the I must mean either all of the individual bodies, which is ludicrous, or it must evidently mean no body at all. The latter being the only possible alternative, the I must necessarily mean the changeless principle in which every body appears and disappears. This is the real meaning of I, even in our daily traffic with the world. And that was something that absolutely blew me away when I first realized it, that the I that I had always felt myself to be was, I had just attributed the wrong identity to it, but the sense of it was not different.
Right.
Somehow it was such a revelation that because I always used to think that, well, there must be a different I. There's a spirit, there's a more spiritual one, there's an awakened one, it's going to be different. But the sense I, the simple referent I,
Mm.
is universal, is
Yeah.
unchanged.
And it's impersonal.
Impersonal, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. That's the error. We thought it was personal.
Right.
But it's
Right.
yeah. And it feels like the truth hiding in plain sight. That sense that we all have, I.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's good. So this is also why, because we are what God is. And with that comes a power that we really don't have any idea the power that comes with after the word I. And we wield that power in our statements. I hate you. I'm sick. I this, I that. It has this it has this power that we send out and we have no idea the impact that it has in our day-to-day life experience until we do, and then we withdraw or we withhold. We don't use it so flagrantly and so negligently. We become really careful, mindful of how it's used.
Yeah.
What is it that appears as world? As soon as we wake up from deep sleep, the existence of a ready-made world, including our own bodies, confronts us. To examine it closely, we utilize our sense organs straight away, one by one, relying on their superficial evidence without a thought. The organ of sight asserts that the world is only form and nothing else. The organ of hearing that the world is only sound and nothing else, and so on. Each organ thus asserts the world as its sole and particular object. In effect, each sense organ contradicts the evidence of the other four organs with equal force. This hopeless mess of contradictory evidence and the stubborn denial by each of the sense organs of the others evidence from positive proof of the falsity of this world as it appears. That's pretty interesting how he puts all that together, right?
Well, I had just never thought of senses in that way. I just had never thought of that, because when I read that, I thought the organ of sight asserts the world as only form and nothing else. I thought, does it? Have I ever had that experience? The organ of hearing that the world is only sound and nothing else. I just had
Yeah,
never.
I've never isolated those
No, no. I mean, I
senses.
don't wake up and my eyes are going, no, those sounds don't exist. It's just this. It's just what you can see. Yeah, I didn't quite get this. I'm interested to hear what other people say because I didn't quite. The bit
Well,
I got was the existence of the positive something. I got that part. But this kind of conflict between sense organs, there's obviously a subtlety there that I'm missing.
it's interesting. I mean, it actually is, if you think about it. When you come online in the morning, it's almost like everything comes online one at a time. Boom, 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 boom. I mean, I can sense, I can recall it. And that is my experience too. I was a little paused by this whole number 7 and those statements that I just read. So I think it's really interesting, and it sounds like where did you go? Gillette has
Jim
Jim
has
has
his,
hand up.
yeah,
Hey,
yeah.
Jim.
Well, I just, I'm not sure I agree with that. I mean, everyone has a way of interpreting, but I think that all the different senses sort of collect
Mhm.
as one to give us our experience as a separate identity. And I mean, we have so many examples of dancing, listening to music, movement, sports. I mean, interacting right now. I think everything operates in the world of, body, mind, senses as a collective. So I don't find any help in considering that I mean, I just disagree. But that doesn't mean I know something that whatever was said, but it doesn't help me get deeper into something. Actually, me disagreeing helps me get deeper into something. And it's this collection of senses that is what makes up our sense of separate identity. So that one I just had to speak up on.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm so happy that you did. Thank you, Jim.
Um, Jenny has written, he's pointing to, this makes sense actually, he's pointing to a very different experience between each sense organ. Mind manages through education to make sense of it. So it appears to us, as Jim said, that it's all a collection, but that's our mind that's doing all of that. And she says it's similar to Don Hoffman's icons on the desktop or Bernardo Kastrup's dashboard. So I would refer you to Jenny's recent podcast with Don Hoffman and the upcoming one in April with Bernardo Kastrup. But thank you for that, Jenny. That makes sense to me that that's not actually our experience of the sense organs is not actually how it is because our mind is synthesizing it all. And is that what you're saying is making? Yeah, I understand now. I didn't get
Yeah,
that part.
I like what Jim said though, because his comment was, he wasn't just taking Atmananda's words as, oh yeah, he said it, it must be true. He's using his own experience, and I like the way you mentioned that, Jim. That the senses do dance with each other, and they do it in a complementary way. And I feel they do it in a complementary way when they're infused with our true nature. That's when they're complementary to each other. They don't conflict each other. One doesn't conflict with the other and isolate itself when we're living in the experience of harmony and flow. And I think the body mind can do that when it's not in conflict with itself.
Clarissa said, A Course in Miracles would assert that this amalgamation of senses is all part of the ego's attempt to create a powerful illusion of separation. And Ronna said, the avatar is recreated every morning on waking.
Yeah, I think both of those are true.
fresh from consciousness's oven.
Yeah, yeah. But it doesn't mean it's a bad thing. If you take the position that the Course implies by the statement that was just made about the Course, you take it as that Clarissa said that it's an ego attempt to create a powerful illusion of separation. That sounds kind of negative, and I've taken the position post Course in Miracles that that's one step just to identify a distinction between awareness and the seeming separate self. When you go back and you rejoin the seeming separate self as one thing, that all goes away. The ego identity thing all goes away because you are also the ego. I am is also the personal self identity. They're not separate, and you have to go back and regain that that identity, bring it back, and welcome it into what it always is. So we should move on.
Yeah.
Number 8.
Number
Is there?
There's one more sentence at the bottom of 7, I think, that you should.
let's thanks, Rana.
Okay,
But
thanks,
all the
Rana.
while, the existence of a positive something is experienced without a break, beyond the shadow of a doubt. This, on closer analysis, is found to be that changeless, subjective I principle, or consciousness itself.
There it is. There's the dancing, Jim. Yeah, thank you for your input, everyone. That's awesome.
Can I say something?
Of course.
Yes. I read yesterday something about Ramana Maharshi because of his cancer, and he said when he puts his attention into himself, he doesn't notice the body anymore. So it's a point of where you put your attention. So aren't we just attention, or the attention goes to the person, or the attention goes to your own self? So it's not only what I see, but you can point your attention.
Yes.
And
Yeah,
if you are pointing your attention to the person, then you are identified with the person. And if you point your attention to the space or whatever you call it, then you are identified with that.
Well, and that it depends on where you're speaking from. Is you're speaking knowingly as presence, there's only one thing. There's only you're there, and that's where Ramana spoke from. Ramana knew that he wasn't the cancer, but yet the cancer was his experience. So he transcended, like what Atmananda was speaking to a few minutes ago. Even at the very end of that last sentence, the I principle or consciousness, it's found to be all of those organs. It's found to be all everything. So he didn't Ramana never identified when his devotees were worried about his cancer. That's not who I am. Don't worry about that. That's not me.
Mm-hmm.
So
he said also, when you are sleeping, you don't feel pain. So when you are in a deep rest situation, you don't feel your body mind.
yes.
So that is what he was pointing to.
Yeah. I totally agree with that. Susan?
Yeah, I think that kind of sums up everything that we've been talking about. That in the deep sleep state, there is the absence of awareness of the body mind, of any object, and therefore pain is not experienced as being as part of the body mind. And so in enlightenment, also the attention is on consciousness completely. There is only consciousness, and the attention does not go out to the body mind.
Yeah. And Jenny said the same thing in a different way. It's more like a relaxation of attention. So it's a relaxation of attention. The attention is no longer going out. It's relaxing from going out to being. And she said, then if you know yourself as consciousness, there's no need to place attention there. If you do, it will take you away. Yeah. It takes you to the object. Yes?
Yeah,
Yeah.
because if you place attention on consciousness, you have made consciousness an object.
Yes. There it is.
Yeah.
Yep. Awesome. I love this discussion, you guys. Very active. Okay, so let's look at 8. We probably won't look at all. Do you want to look at 8 and then
Well,
10?
I think the next 8 and 9 are talking about deep sleep again, which we've discussed at some length.
Then let's move to 10 because 10's juicy.
Yeah, yeah. I just want to say a couple of things about 8 and 9, if I may. That there's only in the absence of objects in deep sleep, what remains is happiness.
Oh, yes. Pure knowing.
And also the point that in that section 5 of the Atmadarshan, that in the absence of everything, what remains is not nothing. What remains is consciousness.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's, that is how is deep sleep the touchstone of one's real nature, because that is what remains. So then 10, you said, mind as mind knows no peace, and mind at peace is no mind at all.
This isn't talking about the thinking mind.
Yeah.
The most universal of all desires in man is unequivocally expressed in the spontaneous statement made by all alike. I want peace of mind, or I want the peace of God, or I want peace and happiness.
Mm-hmm.
It means that the activity of the mind is never our ultimate goal. Examining this statement closely and impartially, we find that peace is the real goal of man's desire. You want to finish that, Susan?
Yeah. But in his utter inability to extricate himself from the clutches of the mind, he links the mind also to that desire for absolute peace and claims himself to be the enjoyer. But alas, when the mind, freed from all its activities, comes into contact with the peace it desired, it finds itself merged and lost in that peace, thus returning to its real nature. Therefore, it is one's own real nature that everybody seeks, knowingly or unknowingly. And that's, that was the whole thesis of Rupert's book, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
That we're looking for happiness, but we are the happiness that we seek.
Yeah.
Yeah, Clarissa just said it. I am the happiness I seek. Yeah.
Yes. So good. Wow. This I'm really enjoying the movement of the content of Atmananda's discourses. I think it's really rich. Gives us a lot to speak about and to engage in. And thank you all for being here. Thank you, Susan, for hosting this week. Let's see, who's our host next week? Do you have the schedule in front of you?
It's Amy, I think, is it?
Amy, you're next.
Amy Gable, yeah.
I'm next.
Yeah.
All right.
Amy's next.
Honest to Pete, I'm sitting here listening to Susan, and Jenny was last week, and I'm thinking, oh my God, how am I going to do this? But it
You'll
will be
be great.
It'll be a blast.
It is a total blast. You'll be awesome. I know you will. And it's just, you just come knowing nothing. You come for the
Come
fun of
empty.
it. It's come empty. Yeah, right. And come for the fun of it. It's a total party. And nobody knows. I mean, Jenny, she gets the name on the door of professor, but she really comes just like one of us anyway. We're all the same. There's no
Well,
hierarchy here.
what's the name of Jenny's podcast? I have to say,
Living and not knowing.
living and not knowing.
Not knowing. That's
Exactly.
right. Yeah. Yeah. This is a beginner place, but we're all, kind of serious, but not too serious. This is an awakening experience, and it's leaking on us. It's getting on us by just being part of it. So,
Well, I think I've used this 3 times now, but I'm going to say it again. When we gather in this way and we discuss these things, we do not know what is going to come fresh from consciousness's oven. We just don't know.
yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So it's been awesome. Thank you all for being here. Love you all, and looking forward to being with Amy Habel next week, and all of you, of course. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you,
Susan.
everyone. It was great.
Yes, it was awesome.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you all.